It is the first time ever, and hopefully the first of many, many more to come. Belly Up Sports once again presents its MD's Fantasy Football NFL Draft coverage on April 28th and 29th. So the Detroit Lions are the ones on the clock. They're going to make their pick soon, but the Giants, I'm getting word, just traded with 50 different guests to bring you the most versatile coverage around, from NFL analysis to fantasy football analysis and pick-by-pick betting analysis. Let's go to the pick here. Terrace Marshall finally off. Extensive coverage on the market live only on BellyUp.tv, Roku, and YouTube starting Thursday, April 28th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
This is the MD's Fantasy Football Show with Dan Mader. Giving you the X's and O's of all things fantasy.
Welcome in, MD Nation, to the show. You're back with the MD's Fantasy Football Show live on Belly Up TV and on the Belly Up Sports Roku channel. Make sure you follow us on social media. We're getting close to the NFL draft, so we have player news, notifications, rumors going on. Keep us up. Keep us on your alerts. Get all that info coming into you live for free. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to make sure you can comment in throughout the show, and download us on your favorite podcast app afterwards. In case you miss any episodes, you can listen to us at your earliest convenience. I'm your host, Dan Mader, joined here with my partner in crime, Mr. Christopher Dowhower. Chris, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. I'm sweating a little bit, kind of confused with this weather. It's 80 degrees. Here it's going to be frosty next week. My sinuses don't love this. but it does mean spring's in the air, and that means the draft is right around the corner. So that part is super exciting.
It does mean the draft is right around the corner. At the beginning of the show, you guys should have saw the promo we have for our NFL draft coverage coming up on April 28th at 7:30 p.m. We'll kick off a half hour before the draft starts. We'll dive into a little preview of what we expect to happen, some picks for you guys to bet on so we can make some money during the NFL draft. I love that new feature now, with more and more states being legal to do that on top of it, so it makes it more fun for us. We'll be back again that Friday, April 29th. That'll be at 6:30 p.m. We'll do the second and third rounds, giving NFL, fantasy football, betting analysis all throughout the night. We got 50 different guests coming. I just released what the roster was going to be for the first round earlier today on our social media accounts at BellyUpMDFF Show. So another reason to check us out on there. But guys, in light of the draft coming up, we got to get through some of these prospects. We have dynasty rookie drafts that are going to happen probably the second the NFL draft is over. So we want to make sure we're talking about these guys. And even though we don't know exactly what their destination is going to be, what our evaluations are, and what we can expect as far as their talent goes, you want to make sure you miss those potholes, those busts, those guys that are very Jekyll and Hyde. Make sure you're valuing them correctly. And the running back class, it's one of the most important ones, whether you're talking about Dynasty, 2022, redraft, best ball, it doesn't matter. Running back is always going to be one of the most important positions to figure out, and has become more tricky as NFL has evolved, right? The running back position, less and less valuable, more and more platoons, more and more timeshares. And as a result, we got to figure out who we actually think can be these contributors. Chris, what's your overall thoughts of this 2022 running back draft class?
Well, first, not to toot our horns too much, but I think we did a pretty good job. We thought the running back, position being kind of hard to kind of nail in the sense of how these, changing the backfields. We hit Ramondre Stevenson. We had Maurice Jones. I'm not sure it's true. We had the Jets running back Michael Carter kind of step up last week there, and these guys we kind of eyed out, guys who weren't necessarily top guys on people's board, but guys we kind of saw talent and we saw production there for somebody. So this running back class, I think, has some diamonds in the rough. There's a little bit more rough, I think, in this class than there has been in the last couple classes, honestly. I'm a little disappointed overall the talent, but I do think there are some guys that you can have that, on your team, whether it's dynasty or standard leagues next year.
Totally agree. And I think we're going to do a good job this year. Now, here's what I'm going to say. I don't think there's as much top-end talent this year as there was last year. But I do think the depth is a little bit better when you get past the top-tier guys. Where last year, I felt like once you got past that top tier, I don't want to touch anybody. And for the most part, we were right about that. But I want to kick off the show talking about not Breece Hall, but Kenneth Walker. Because everyone at this point, we're going to talk about Breece Hall, but everyone at this point, whether you're an NFL draft analysis or fantasy football, the consensus is Breece Hall's number one guy. And we'll get into why in just a second. Kenneth Walker, though, for me, is the best pure runner on tape. He's got great vision. He's got great explosiveness. He breaks tackles. He runs violently. Everything you would look for. And he's a home run threat every time he touches the ball. Everything you look for out of a running back that you want to do well in fantasy, Kenneth Walker has. He even has the size, 5'10", 210. He has a big enough size for a workload, heavy stock build. The problem is, and this is where the bittersweetness for Kenneth Walker for me comes in as an evaluator, the problem is he might be the worst pass blocker in this class. He might be. Now, I don't take a lot of stock out of the whole he didn't have a big production as in his receiving line because they didn't throw the ball that much to their running back, and I don't think that was a reflection of Kenneth Walker. I think it was a reflection of the offense. It reminds me a lot of, Devin Singletary, where he didn't have a lot of production, but it was just because they didn't throw the ball to the running back. He's proven he's got soft enough hands to catch the ball out of the backfield. Are you going to ask Kenneth Walker to split out wide? Probably not, but he definitely has soft enough hands from what I've been able to see in the limited capacity that we have to be able to see it, albeit that he's got soft enough hands. He can catch those screens, catch those swings, catch the angle routes out of the backfield. I'm not worried about that part. The part that I'm worried about with Kenneth Walker, especially in 2022 and perhaps beyond, I don't know if he definitively gets on the field because of how long of a way he has to go to be even an adequate pass blocker. But for Chris, for you, Kenneth Walker, what's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily as high on him as you are, but I do see a lot of talent there. I do have a little concern about the catching, pass catching, not necessarily that he can't do it, but we've seen a lot of coaches not necessarily willing to try to give guys opportunity. You and I are big Nick Chubb fans, and coming out of college, I think he could definitely showed he could catch the ball, but he was kind of pigeonholed in a system that he was in necessarily get the opportunity to do so. I worry about Kenneth Walker, being a guy who's got great pass protection, as you're kind of pointing out, not even great, in really poor pass protection. Being kind of pigeonholed, not giving a chance to kind of show that he can catch the ball out of the backfield because you have a kind of a rep in a sense coming into the league. So I do worry about him overall how high I'm going to go for him, but I do think he's definitely the top two. I think of the top, there's the running back class. You talked about Breece Hall before. I think Walker's there right with him.
Okay, we'll have to see exactly what happens. Like I said, I can't make a definitive statement on the guy because that's how vital, especially these young running backs, pass blocking is. I talk about this every single year. They're not going to see the field. It reminds me, from a fantasy standpoint, I comped him to D'Angelo Williams. His running style reminds me so much of him, very fluid, can cut one cut, he sees the cut back lanes, and he can explode through. He's a home run threat. But fantasy-wise, the situation around him reminds me of Cam Akers, where I think there's a chance we're going to see him in redraft leagues. Be a guy that, depending upon where he lands, obviously, but be a guy that gets touted in that 5th, 6th, 7th round. And I'm going to be sitting there saying, don't draft Kenneth Walker that high because he's probably not going to play or be in a meaningful way week 1. At best, as far as 2022 is concerned, you might have the second half of the season, depending upon what situation the team that he winds up with is in and how far of a way he's able to come. Can he get it enough to where the coaches trust him or not? But it's a real issue. And it just reminds me of Cam Akers. Everyone drafted Cam Akers in the 5th round. And I kept saying, look, no, not only did he have 2 running backs in front of him, but he was too far away from being the adequate pass blocker that he needs to be to get on the field enough. And it didn't happen until the second half of the season. And that's why most people picked up who had Cam Akers at the end of that season, picked him up off the waiver wire. They didn't draft him, even though they was drafted in the mid rounds. So I think Kenneth Walker might be in the same deal there. Dynasty purposes, I don't have as much reservation because I do think he'll get to a solid enough place at least by year 2. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I don't know if you want to rebuttal anything I just said.
No, I think that you make a lot of excellent points. I think the key is going to be the landing spot. I mean, you talk about kind of what he reminds you of. The situation kind of reminds me of Kareem Hunt coming out. Kareem Hunt wasn't a great pass protector at all. And you were kind of questionable, could he catch the ball out of the backfield? And I think that, now we know that's definitely he can, but he was given an opportunity to show that he could. So if this guy runs in the right situation, he absolutely can. But I look at other situations, maybe like a Tampa Bay, for example, where there's an easy avenue for him to kind of get pigeonholed for an early down guy versus having some kind of like a Gio or a Fournette who is more pass protection guy and catch the ball out of the backfield. So that's kind of my concern. Like I said, I think where he falls is going to be vital and where his value is going to be.
Speaking of Kareem Hunt, I actually comped him to Breece Hall here, who is, of course, our number one running back, my number one running back, most people's number one running back, Breece Hall. And the reason why I comped him, I know people are going to say, like, whoa, Breece Hall, he had the big combine. He ran the surprising 4.39 40 time. He doesn't play that fast. Okay, and that's why I think it was a surprise that he actually ran that fast for me and other people. He gets to that third level really consistently because he's good at breaking tackles. He has good wiggle. He has good power getting through the line of scrimmage. He's got a good one-cut, get north and south mentality, and he'll punch his way through. And because of that, he'll break his way to that third level of the defense. Once he gets there, he doesn't really have that extra third gear to kick into where he runs past the secondary. And, he played in Iowa State. He played against decent enough competition to kind of get a gauge for that. I don't see a burner. I don't see a Kenneth Walker where he touched the ball and I think he might go for a home run threat. But at the same time, there's nothing that Breece Hall can't do. He's big enough for the workload. He catches the ball well enough. He pass blocks well enough. It could be similar situation to that of a Najee Harris, depending upon where he winds up, where he could get enough volume, even though he's not a spectacular athlete, not a Jonathan Taylor level athlete, but could get enough volume and is able to do everything that we're looking at a potential RB1 as soon as 2022. And because he has the size, I do love him in Dynasty. He will be my 101 in rookie drafts. There's absolutely no doubt about it in my mind. I confident Kareem Hunt because the way he shifts in and out of his breaks when he makes that one cut, especially on zone running schemes, that would definitely be the best fit for him. Chris, when you look at Breece Hall, though, what do you see?
Yeah, this is definitely my favorite running back of this whole entire class, and maybe for a little bit while. I really love Breece Hall, and I'll give you a comp. It might be a little bit of a lazy one, but it reminds me of David Montgomery. I went to the same school, but as you kind of talked about, has a great all-around skill set. Isn't necessarily going to wow you with the home run threat where he's going to be breaking 80, 90 yarders, but I kind of label it a 3-down slasher, whereas this guy's going to be out there. He's already shown in college he can play all 3 downs, one of the best pass protectors in this class, and a guy that you're going to have out there having, gashing off 7-8 yard runs. I think where he's going to be really effective is in a zone cut scheme, and he can be physical as well because he has good patience. I think Breece Hall has it all. The only thing I would kind of knock on him in a sense is you talk about the home run speed, and he doesn't necessarily one of those satellite backs where he's not like a Christian McCaffrey or necessarily an Alvin Kamara where you can kind of line up as a mismatch. He's a good pass catcher and a good pass protector, but he isn't a mismatch per se.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree with that assessment across the board. Now, so Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, both are top 2 guys, varying difference on how high we are on them. But are these guys? Let's go with Breece Hall. Is anybody going to get in the first round? Because I can put that graphic up again. Even in Breece Hall's case, we're still talking consensus right now, 2nd round pick. Is anybody going to go in the first round? You think?
You could have one of those teams, maybe like a Buffalo, or you kind of saw the Chiefs do that a couple years ago with CHE. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those teams in the late 30s maybe looks at a running back opportunity and steals him. Doesn't want to wait till necessarily day 2. We saw that kind of bite. Who was it? The Miami Dolphins last year when they wanted Javonte Williams, and Denver kind of jumped up and got him on day 2. So I do think and the Jets had the same situation happen to them, kind of the same thing last year. So I think there's going to be maybe a push. If you really like this guy as your top guy, maybe if you're later on in the first round, or maybe you trade up a little bit. Tampa Bay is a great situation. I know Fournette re-signed, but one of those kinds of teams I could see maybe making that leap.
It would be interesting to see. I want especially with Brees Hall, because he could be that guy who's that RB1 rookie this year. I really just hope
Guys, you're going to hear me salivate over this guy. I
just really hope he winds up in a situation where he gets that opportunity early. That would be my only.
Your Najee Harris comparison is like a great one, I think, and an opportunity I think he could have easily.
Let's talk about some guys that we, or at least I know I am, a little less excited about, but were talked about a lot early on in the season, did have great production, and this happens every year where a guy starts off high on somebody's list. He has the production to go along with it, but then he turns in crappy combine times and he plummets like a rock. That person is Kyren Williams, a running back out of Notre Dame. Chris, I'm going to let you take the lead on this because you liked Kyren Williams a lot more than I did coming into the season. So talk to me about where you're at on him now.
Yeah, I was definitely disappointed with the combine, and I did kind of knock him down on my board as a result. I loved Kyren Williams in college. I mean, I know he's a little small, and people don't always love the smaller backs, but what I saw a lot of was really similar to what I saw with Michael Carter last year. A guy who can get in and out of ships, and he's not a small guy in the sense where how he runs. He's willing to get physical. He was, I think, sixth in the nation in breaking tackles. He doesn't necessarily have that home run speed, and you kind of saw that. So I wasn't necessarily surprised he run like a 4.3 or 4.4. But I was a little surprised he ran that slow. But Devin Singletary is a guy you threw out there just recently in the conversation, and I think he has a lot of. Devin Singletary had a similar 40. So I think there's still room for Kyren Williams to kind of be on somebody's board. I think this guy gets a chance to show if he can play. He will be somebody as a tandem back. I wouldn't say he's ever be a workhorse back, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's like a Chase Edmonds type of guy where he can get 10, 15 carries and or 10, 15 touches because he can catch the ball out of the backfield really well. He's showing that he's one of the willing pass protector. He's not the biggest guy necessarily, but he's willing to get down and get dirty if he has to. So I still like Kyren Williams a lot. I just don't necessarily love him as much as I did.
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We'll have our first debate here. It'll be a soft one because, like you said, you've acknowledged you come down on him a little bit. But I don't see a guy who's going to be in the NFL for more than 3 seasons, period. I don't think there's any upside with him. I was not surprised by the 40 time. He doesn't have a second gear on film, period. He was productive. Yes, he has elusivity when he gets to a line of scrimmage. He can make guys miss in close quarters. But once he gets out to that second level, he doesn't run past the second level. He doesn't even have the second gear to go to. We talked about the Brees Hall. I didn't see a third gear. There's no second gear on Kyren Williams. He catches the ball fine, but he doesn't do much with it after he does the catch. And I think in the NFL, the best he could hope to be would be a third down specialist, given his small size. But he's not built the same way like an Austin Eckler is, where he's small, but he's compact. He has the muscle. He's a lean 5'9" on top of it. And that's why I'm not a big fan of his. He was 154th in 15-plus yard carries. He doesn't break very many of them. He was 19th in avoided tackles, and that's what I'm talking about, the elusivity in tight quarters. So I recognize that part of it. But this is a guy who just doesn't have a second gear, and I think he can only be a third down specialty back. But unless he's able to make an impact on special teams, I think we're looking at one of our first busts here at the running back draft class. That's just me. I'll let you rebuttal.
I just say I think he's Devin Singletary. So that's however you want to take that. Then you can twist that however you decide. I mean, I think given the opportunity, he can produce. I think there's also a chance, as you kind of speak about, he can get pigeonholed and kind of run out of the league. But I think that he's not just a third down back. I think he's going to show more than that. And I think I said Devin Singletary would be my comp for him.
All right. So let's move on to another guy called Jerome Ford. Now, this guy intrigues me. He intrigues me in the sense of he's not, your big, typical, sleeper prospect that I think is going to make a big impact, let's say, on a huge level. But he has a skill set where he can do a little bit of everything. He is a true 3-down back. He has a size for it, 5'10", 220 roughly. He runs with power. He runs with tenacity. He has a good north-south, get one cut, get up the field. Surprised me with his 40 time. We ran a 4.46. I don't see him playing quite to that speed on film, but he reminds me of a Khalil Herbert. He has good vision. He's smooth in and out of the hole. And I think he's going to be a guy in the NFL because he can do a little bit of everything at a pretty decent enough rate. He's going to be one of those high-end handcuffs where the second the starter gets hurt, he'll come in, he'll get enough volume because he can do everything. He doesn't have to get pigeonholed into one role or another. And he's going to be that guy you want to pick up off the waiver wire or have handcuffed whoever your starter is, and know that when he gets out there in the field, I think he's going to be very productive. I don't know if he has the potential ceiling to really be more than that. I think his absolute ceiling would be a guy like a James Conner, where maybe he gets a shot and is able to, because he's able to do a little everything, is able to hold on to it for a time period. But I don't know if he's quite at that level. He's ever going to be a consistent starter. But I do think this guy is going to be a high-end handcuff because he's an all-around back, and there's very few weaknesses to his game. He's just not a wow you type of athlete. He's not a special type of athlete in that sense. But what do you think?
I'll throw a name at you. You can think of this kind of matches what you're talking about. I think he kind of reminds me of Marlon Mack in some senses. Marlon Mack is the kind of guy that, can do a little bit of everything, had the opportunity, and I think this is where this guy is going to be. If he has the opportunity to kind of, like you said, a high-end handcuff, if he gets a chance to kind of show coaches, I think he's one of those guys that's hard to get off the field, because I think he's going to do the things that he's supposed to. He's going to run for the yards he's supposed to. He's going to hit the holes. And I think he is capable of being a workhorse back, because he kind of handled that role at Cincinnati. You kind of talked about him not necessarily showing the home run speed or that 40 he ran on game film. But what you did see is a guy who can handle 20 carries, 25 carries easily, and just keep grinding and keep getting those yardage. So I think that one-cut workhorse, I think in the right kind of system, all like a Shanahan system, which is, the big vogue thing around the NFL right now, I think he can be very successful if he gets a chance to kind of be that, shows that.
Okay. So you're kind of on the same level as I am when it comes to Jerome Ford. Now I'll throw that graphic up there again just to show that part of it. He is somebody we're talking about 5th, 6th round. I don't think he's going to go much higher than that. Again, not a special athlete. I don't think anybody's going to look to really start him. But today's league, that's usually good enough for a backup running back who can bring everything to the table to get his opportunity. The next guy I want to talk
just real quick, I was going to say, Benny Snell got a chance to kind of shine, quote unquote, for Pittsburgh at the point. This guy's definitely more talented than Benny Snell, so I think that's kind of what you're looking at.
Fair point. God, I hated Benny Snell. Could not understand why he kept getting opportunities. This guy I want to talk about next, though. So he's similar to Jerome Ford in the sense of he has a skill set that covers about everything. 3-down worker, doesn't have to get pigeonholed into one role or particular. But we're talking a much wider range when it comes to his ceiling to bust potential. And that's Zaquandre White. He's intriguing to me. Very, very intriguing to me. But at the same time, I will tell you right now, there's going to be people out there, especially in this fantasy industry, in the dynasty industry, that are going to get infatuated with him and try to talk you into overpricing him. You have to take him correctly. This is a guy, if you're in your rookie drafts, I'm not taking him before the 3rd round. As I wouldn't take him in the 2nd round. I wouldn't take him before your 3rd round, because we're talking about a guy who has the floor of somebody who might be out of the league in 2 years. But we're also talking about a guy who actually does have a skill set where if he put it together on tape and was able to get in the right situation, could be a high-end RB2, maybe even more. And the reason why I say all that is because this is a guy who has tremendous power when he runs the football. I don't think there's a running back in this class who has a more violent style, and as a result of that, breaks a ton of tackles. I don't have the stats here right in front of me, but he's one of the top guys as far as broken tackles heading into the college football league, and he just really delivers it. He plays much faster than his 40. He didn't run at the combine. He ran his pro day. His pro day, he did a 4.63 40 time. He looks like he runs much faster than that on tape, because I've seen him plenty of times be able to turn the corner on a defense, be able to get upfield, and have another gear when he gets to the next level of the field. Pretty good vertical, pretty good broad jump. I compared him to a slimmer Chris Carson, where I think he's got good enough hands. You're not going to have him as your 3rd down specialty back or anything like that, but good enough hands that you can throw it to out of the backfield. You can check the ball down to him. But with his punishing style, he's always going to get that 4 or 5 yards. And I think that's something that's coveted in the NFL and will give him a chance to be on the field.
Yeah, I'm not nearly as big a fan as Zaquandre White as you seem to be, but I will say that I do think he runs very physical. I think he can be a power back, a 2-down back. I don't see him being utilized in the 3rd down or a passing attack. I think he's too stiff in the hips. I think he's going to struggle to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield consistently. But I do see the guy that can be a guy that you can use in short yardage situations. Could be a guy that can maybe get you some touchdowns or vulturing some opportunities. But what I'm concerned about you compared to Chris Carson, I think is a good comp in the sense he runs very physical like Chris Carson, which Chris Carson quite often is injured as a result of that running style. But he also runs way higher than Chris Carson, and that's my knock on this guy. As powerful as he is, he runs too high for me, and I think I worry he's going to be out of the league in 2 years, not just because he can't play, but because the injuries are going to toll up. People are going to have to key off on this guy if he keeps running like the way he is in a sense. So for me, I'm not necessarily huge on this guy, but I do think he can be somebody that on your radar. They can get you, but he gets a chance to kind of play or he gets a clear role in an early down situation, like a Damian Harris was in New England, for example. If you see him be that kind of early down smash power back guy, yeah, you want to add him. But I think this is a guy that I'm kind of concerned, especially dynasty wise, but I wouldn't overdraft.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you just said. Again, like this is one of the players that has one of the highest, or I should say one of the farthest reaching ranges as far as what his output could be. He does run very high. I even have that in my notes here. Runs too high, average hands. The other thing is that he's raw at the position, which is where some of his upside does come from, but he also has some of the fundamental things he needs to work on. This is a guy that came into college as a linebacker, converted running back. He runs like it, by the way. He looks like he's running out there to try to hit people like he was a linebacker still. But as a result of that, he's still kind of learning the fundamentals of the position. I just think he's a very intriguing prospect because he does have that extra upside if he's able to put it together with his style. And again, does have that low center of gravity, runs faster than that 40 time would suggest. But I prefaced it with this. Don't draft him before your third round, which is about the time you start taking chances on guys like this anyway in your rookie drafts, because you don't want to get left holding the bag on somebody that you are counting on to be able to use in your dynasty leagues at some point down the road. You don't want that to happen. Okay, because again, wide boom bust range scenario. We got more running backs to talk about on the other side. We don't have these guys in order, so we're jumping around here, making it an interesting conversation. But we got more to talk about on the other side. Guys, stay tuned. The MD's Fantasy Football Show right here on Belly Up TV on the Belly Up Sports Roku channel. We'll be back with you right after this. Fellas, have you started your spring cleaning yet? The carpets need cleaning, the drapes need dusting, and your lawn needs mowing. Spring has sprung, and the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming have the best tools for cleaning aisle 5 in your pants. Time to clear out your winter bush and join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. Manscaped has the full package you need for spring cleaning this year. The Performance Package 4.0 is the only tool you'll need to keep your boys looking and smelling like the fresh tulips your partner wants. To start off your spring cleaning, use the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0 to get the most precise shave on your hedges. Did we mention it's waterproof? No need to worry about watering your grass with this tool, equipped with an LED light so you'll know it'll be a major asset to the new shower routine. Clear your holes and smell the spring air with the Weed Whacker. This nose and ear hair trimmer provided proprietary skin-safe technology which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes. After clearing your nose, make sure you get rid of that foul ball smell with the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver. Finish off your grooming routine with the Plow 2.0, the perfect razor for the finest shave on your face. Because if you're using the Lawnmower 4.0 on your balls and your face, you're doing it wrong, boys. Get 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY at manscaped.com. It's time to throw out your old hygiene habits and upgrade your life.
You're listening to the MD's Fantasy Football Show.
And welcome back in, Empty Nation. You're watching the MD's Fantasy Football Show live on BellyUp.tv. We're also live on the Belly Up Sports Roku channel. Subscribe to our YouTube to comment in throughout the show. And download us on your favorite podcast app. You can catch us up on all the episodes we have in store for you guys everywhere. Follow us on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show. I'm your host, Dan Mader, joined here with Chris Dowhauer. We're talking about running backs. Getting ready for that NFL draft cover. It's going to be coming up on April 28th at 7:30 p.m. on same locations, by the way, Belly Up TV and Roku. And we'll be on the Belly Up YouTube for that one, actually. Little little bigger range here because we're going to have 50 different guests, a bunch of guys coming on talking about different analysis throughout the night. It's going to be a lot of fun. Chris, we had a lot of fun last year despite, 12 hours total of streaming?
Yeah, we kind of had our cherry pop, so to speak, in a sense. Last year, we kind of got to saw, as we became the draft gurus and sat there for 12 hours, we got to see people kind of talk about holding it the entire time. You and I did, I think, excellent job of not only staying awake, but we just definitely did have to use the bathroom while we were on TV, and we had wonderful guests. I had a great time.
I was using the bathroom. You just couldn't see it.
Well, MD Nation, that's our secret. But yeah, I think was definitely enjoyable, and we enjoyed a cocktail watching our draft. So I hope MD Nation does as well. So I think it was definitely something that we definitely had a good time with, and we hope to have a good time again this year.
Oh, it was definitely a draft for the people by a bunch of different people. And I'm so excited we get to have as many guests again in the back this year because it just allows us to do a lot of different things. And keep your attention throughout because you're going to get so many more different personalities. Every 5 picks, we have 3 different guests coming on. So it's something we love to do. I'm glad we get to do it for a second year. Let's carry on with these running backs. Let's talk about Tyler Algier from BYU. If I could ever find his graphic at the tip of my fingers. There we go. This is a guy I'm not as big of a fan of, but I do think he's going to have a role at the next level. He was highly productive. I think part of that comes from just being a big, powerful guy that he is, 5'11", 220, playing at a BYU, level competition where he can literally, he's bigger than everybody else on the other side of the field with the exception of the lineman. He's a road grinder. He knows how to push forward. He knows how to fall forward. Ran a 4.6 40. That's about what I expected. An average athlete. He's not going to jump off the tape at you. However, like some of his other counterparts, he can do enough of a little bit of everything. Now, I don't love him in the passing game as far as a receiver goes because he doesn't go anywhere with the ball once it's in his hands on the perimeter, but he is one of the better pass blockers in this class, which I think will allow him to get on the field at some point, or at least give him the opportunity to be, a high-end handcuff. I have him linked to CJ Anderson. Reminds me a lot of him how he grinds things out. He gets those 4 or 5 yards a pop, and he's better. He's going to be better than your typical backup, which is why I have his career range as a backup to possibly part-time starter. I have his fantasy football projection as a, potentially RB3 if he falls into the right situation. I don't love the guy, but I think he's got a role at the next level. What about you?
I am a fan of Tyler Algier, and especially the next level. And I know there's some knock on him because he's kind of his production kind of jumped his senior year, and he hadn't really seen that previous to that. But I also think part of that is he talked about his running style. I think this guy is very physical, and I think that he has a very nice floor. The guy I would say his floor would kind of remind me of, it was the Williams kid out of from Kansas City last year, where you saw him kind of take over for CHES for periods of time and was very serviceable. Kind of has that all-around range, kind of that grinder. And I think that he's going to have kind of that's the floor. I think the ceiling could be like a Mark Ingram type in the NFL. I think he can be that guy. I saw a comp for him as Marion Barber from back in the day. That kind of style where I think he can be an early down smash guy. I would love him in a Charger situation where I would definitely be all over him if the Chargers were such a team to have him in the right situation. I think he's a great complementary back. Even maybe Detroit, for example, with Swift, just kind of pairing him up with kind of a faster guy. I think he'll be a great tandem back if he's used correctly. I do think he's jumped off the tape to me was he's second in the country in yards after contact and ninth in broken tackles. So I think this guy is going to be something that does translate. I know the BYU competition is necessarily top notched all the time, but I do think that Zach Wilson went number 2. That was okay. I think that they paid enough guys to kind of show you this guy can break tackles. Is going to be a physical guy that you want out there. Jordan Howard role is an easy role. I see kind of him plugging into immediately, and then kind of he could grow from there possibly.
Yeah, again, I don't disagree with anything you just said. Like I said, I think he has a role, whether he becomes the part-time starter that some of those guys we listed off as comparisons or not, I think remains to be seen. He's somebody that right now consensus has him somewhere between that 5th and 7th round, depending upon what mock you go with. But he's definitely going to be one of those guys that he's taken late. He'll have some value. I don't dispute that at all. But I don't think he's super special or will last a long time. The guy I'm very intrigued where he gets drafted at and what happens as a result after that is James Cook. Obviously, Dalvin Cook's little brother. Yes, he's explosive. No, I made sure I did not comp him to Dalvin Cook. That would have been lazy of me. I comped him actually to Tevin Coleman, although I think he's a lot better in the passing game than a Tevin Coleman is. But a sprinter at heart, maybe not a guy you want to give the ball a ton to between the tackles. But here's what would be my challenge for James Cook. Can you put on 10 more pounds and still be as explosive? Because if he can, I do believe he could be a similar type talent to his older brother, Dalvin Cook. Now, the way they run is a little bit similar. They're brothers. He probably looked up to his brother for a long time. They were training. He has some nuances that's going to remind you of Dalvin, but he's not quite the in-between tackle guy because he doesn't have the same type of power. He doesn't have the same wiggle in and out of tackles, but you can tell he also understands the game. He's got a high IQ. It shows up when he's reading defenses, when he's looking for the holes. It shows up there. He's going to be a special teams guy. So he's definitely going to be an NFL contributor, which will also give him more opportunities to see what he can do at the running back position, at the very least as an explosive pass catcher that they can team up with in the backfield. He's another one that I think has a wide range. He could always just wind up being a gadget player, special teams player, or I think he could be an RB2. Again, if he's able to put 10 pounds on, let's say, keep his explosive ability, I think he could be a staple running back in somebody's offense. So that's why he's got a wide range. He's somewhere between a 4th and 6th round right now. What do you think, Chris?
I think he's Naheem Hines. I think that's what he's going to project to in the pros, and I think that's what he's going to be. I think he's a mismatch. I don't think he's a running back necessarily. I don't think he's ever going to peck on that 10 pounds. I think part of the problem is he doesn't necessarily run physically enough. I think he's very fast. I think he's very quick. He's got pretty decent vision. I think he is one of those guys you can line up all over the field, and it can be a mismatch. You can get him, on linebackers or on a safety. So I do think he's going to kind of be used like a Naheem Hines. Now, will he have a higher ceiling? Hopefully, depending on where he kind of falls. Because like Austin Eckler, we kind of saw that role work out perfectly for him. I think Cook could be similar to Austin Eckler if he's utilized, to the maximum. But I think it's more inclined he's going to probably be Naheem Hines and probably a guy that you kind of use as a weapon out of the backfield.
The one thing I will say about him even becoming a pass-catching specialist is that he's got to work on his technique and pass blocking because he's very lean. He gets overpowered quite a bit. So he's going to have to be
I think he's going to catch.
Well, and that's why I think he's going to have to be a technician, though, because look around the NFL. Even if you're there to be a pass catcher, you still don't get into that backfield unless you can competently pass block. So that's why it's still an issue, even though when he's out in the field, you figure it's just to get him the ball in space, which is why I think, again, he has a wide range because he could just be nothing more than a gadget player, special teams guy. For fantasy football purposes, that doesn't usually have a whole hell of a lot of value.
Well, I was going to say, I tell you where it could have a hell of a lot of value. I talked about Tampa Bay earlier. I think he'd be a fantastic back for Tampa Bay as it utilizes the kind of that pass catching back out of the backfield mismatch. I think Brady would love him.
Listen, Brady allows Leonard Fournette and nobody else in that backfield cleared by the 3-year contract that they gave him. I think we're looking at another big year out of Leonard Fournette, but that'll be for after we get past the draft stuff when we start talking about 2022 coming up. I can't wait for that transition. Let's talk about this transition. Pierre Strong. I'm going to let you lead off with Pierre Strong.
I know he ran a grade 40. I know he went to a small school and people want to make a big story about a guy in a small school. He's just a guy, in my opinion. Yes, he ran a 4.4. Now, I do think he brings explosiveness, and I will say that he's one of the probably true home run threats in this class, where if he gets on stretch on a zone, like speedy zone like I have, if you get him on that zone stretch and he gets that corner, like a Raheem Mostert, for example, he can turn the corner and make big plays. He doesn't have great vision. He's not a great tackle breaker, so he's going to be very inclined to need that kind of opportunity to be like a Tevin Coleman or, like I said, a Raheem Mostert, where that edge and that system's kind of fitting perfectly for him. Otherwise, I think this guy's out of the league in about 2 or 3 years.
So I have in my notes here, which pretty much agree with what you said. Explosive runner, does run with speed. That does show up on tape. The 40 time doesn't surprise me. He is a good one cut, get north and south. He sees that initial cutback lane. That's what he brings to the table. Here's the problem. He's small. He's 5'11". He's only 205. He doesn't run with power. He doesn't have a compact body build. And frankly, he's a 0 in the passing game while having played in South Dakota State. So he didn't play against the best competition in the world to go on top of it. I'm with you. I do not see a guy who translates into a contributor at the next level outside of maybe special teams. That would be about it. I don't see a guy they're going to trust enough to put on the field. And at the NFL level, he runs for a small guy. He doesn't get low enough. He doesn't run with enough power for me to think he's ever going to be able to contribute at the running back position in any kind of significant way. So I think we agree on Pierre Strong there for the most part. We don't need to spend any more time on him. I want to move on to Rachaad White because this is a guy who's getting a lot of publicity from a lot of different people. There's a group of people out there who love them some Rachaad White, and I'm not necessarily saying that they're wrong. There are things to like. He does have the big size, the 6'2", 210 size. No one can dispute that. He did run a good 44.48 at the combine, had a good vertical, 38, had a decent broad, 125. Semi-productive, not overly productive. The thing that the fantasy industry loves about him, and you're going to hear it time and time again, he's got the great hands. Why? Because he's a converted wide receiver. The problem I have with him and why I'm not going to get too excited to buy him is that while all that is great, he still runs the running back position like he's a wide receiver. I comped him to Ty Montgomery, where I think he's going to make the opposite transition. He's going to come as a running back, and he's going to finish his NFL career as a wide receiver. I don't think he stays as a running back the entire time. But, Chris, what side of the aisle do you fall on?
I do think he stays as a running back the entire time, but I think your Ty Montgomery comparisons really hits the nail on the head in a sense. I think he plays with the position just like a receiver, as you kind of pointed out. I know that this is that everybody's kind of analytics and fantasy darling right now, and I look at this guy has one of two ways he could go, and it's similar. It's kind of interesting they went to the same school. He could be Kenny Balaj, size, speed, has all the different things you kind of look at, or he could be Aaron Jones, because that's what they're trying to push the narrative of. Like Aaron Jones is kind of like he has the skill set. He's just had an opportunity. He's an explosive guy, catch the ball at the backfield. Just no matter him never getting a chance to kind of be that workhorse back. I don't see Aaron Jones. I see more Kenny Balaj. I see an upright runner. I see a guy who relies totally on his speed, doesn't have any vision for the most part. And I don't really like him even in a zone scheme necessarily, because I don't think he hits the hole or hits the edges quick enough. I think he's kind of a glider runner, and I think he's going to be a good pass catcher at the backfield. So I do see he could have a niche, especially in PPR, because I do see him in the right system or the right coach that kind of falls in love with him being that guy that's catching the ball constantly out of the backfield, a glorified James White in a sense, if that makes sense. I think I can see that role for him, because James White ran the same way coming out of college. He still does. He still runs with a receiver to a degree. So I think it's kind of a comparison you can kind of look at.
Yeah, he doesn't run with enough power. He doesn't know how to use his body in between the tackles. And you see it on the film. He just doesn't run with that head tilt aggressiveness that you need to be able to do, especially when you're expected to at 6'2", 210. Again, to go back to the size, they're going to expect you to be willing to stick your shoulder down, go through the hole. Watch him on tape. He doesn't do it. And if he doesn't do it at the college level, I know he's converted over and he's still learning the position, but he doesn't do it at the college level. He takes any time at all to learn how to do that in the NFL level, he's going to get killed. And that's my ultimate worry with Rachaad White. And the thing about, like you mentioned a James White type, the only reason James White's revered in the NFL and revered in fantasy football is because he wound up landing in a situation that they were willing to use him as a third down back and willing to use him all the time as the passing down third down back. I look around the league, I don't see too many James Whites. I see a lot of comps to James White. I see a lot of type of running backs of that style, but I don't see them getting used consistently enough. That doesn't seem to happen. We talk all the time, there's platoons and everything like that, but guys have kind of moved away from the pigeonhole specialist because what they've realized, at least most teams at this point, is that they get very predictable based on their personnel when they do that. When Patriots went through that for a while, they only really overcame it with Tom Brady. I mean, so what kind of a chance is he going to really have? What team does he have to go to have that opportunity even, you think?
I mean, the one pops in my head immediately is Arizona. I think Arizona is a customized fit for him. I think he's a glorified receiver, as you kind of pointed out. He'd be catching all the short angle routes out of the backfield. He'd replace Chase Edmonds. I think that's going to kind of depend on what coach, like I said, while I agree with you that the coaches don't necessarily play all these guys. They all seem to demand to have one. So Kenneth Gainwell got drafted by the Eagles last year. I don't really know why, but he was, and he got a role as a result of
Flamed
that.
out quickly.
But I think that's what you're going to see. Kind of this guy got opportunity to do. Where some coaches are going to fall in love with your skill set, and we're going to be able to utilize you for this. And that's where you're kind of watch with this guy. I think if he falls in the right situation, and you see the teams are just he's going to be that pass catcher out of the backfield and come hell or high water, then you want to jump on him. But if you see him kind of fighting for a position between him and the second, third back for just playing time, not a guy necessarily a target in dynasty. Early on.
I mean, look, Arizona, Chris going with the narrative there, stays in Arizona. It is the only fit. I shouldn't say the only fit, but it is the fit that makes the most sense as far as what team would give him that sole role. That would be the Arizona Cardinals, being that they have James Conner right now and let go of Chase Edmonds. But he has to land into that type of situation. Otherwise, I don't see much of a future for Rashad White.
Well, I'll throw two teams that I would just, kind of facetiously, but you never know. I wouldn't be surprised. The Raiders and the 49ers are two teams they seem to kind of like those kind of running backs. Josh McDaniels and Kyle Shanahan seem to love that mismatch out of the backfield.
There's a couple of problems with both those teams. With the Raiders, you still have Kenyon Drake under contract. They still have Drake, and they still have Jacobs there, and I
think he's going to play. I think they might draft him, so. That's my point.
Possibly. I think it's a loaded backfield as it is for the Raiders concerned. And for the 49ers, they don't draft running backs who are receiving specialists because they don't throw the ball to their damn running backs to begin with. So I don't see that happening because of that reason either. I do like your Arizona, though, one. Let's talk about Isaiah Spiller. So this is actually on a lot of people's boards the number 3 running back overall. I think he's in my tier of who I think that third best running back is. I don't know if I put him as my third best rookie running back just yet. Watching him on tape, there's nothing that's going to jump out to you like, oh, this is a superstar guy. He doesn't have the wow factor as an athlete. But what he does have is all the tools you're looking for, and it's at a higher degree than that of a Jerome Ford or some of the other guys that we've talked about that we thought could be high-end handcuffs. He's got good vision. He has good balance. He breaks tackles. He consistently finishes runs, usually picks up that half yard, sticks his head down. He can catch the ball, and he has solid pass blocking skills. I think he's somebody, depending upon where he lands, could quite shock a lot of people in how early he becomes a significant contributor because he can do all those things. And I think he has a good enough skill set at all of them where he's not a star, but I do think he's a starter. What do you think, Chris?
I think he's Spencer Ware. I think that
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Yeah, that is the truth. That's what I see Spencer Ware. I am not impressed with Spiller. I know I won't argue hard that he's not the third best running back, and that's where I kind of feel about this class in general. I think it's going to kind of be hit or miss, and a lot depends on the situations they fall into. I think for him, I see some of the skills you're talking about. I do think a guy I put it listed him as kind of a early down grinder. I think this is a guy that could definitely be utilized on the field. I can see him being used in the right rotation, but I don't still ever see him kind of being the guy. He never really stepped up in Texas A&M to kind of excel as people kind of expected him to be. Now I know their quarterback play was atrocious, but their offensive line wasn't that bad. And I never saw the big plays that kind of talked about other guys, limited big plays. I didn't see Spiller have the big plays. It's about having the hands, but they really didn't use them. And the pass protection is something I'm not keen on with him. So I think he has the skills and the body kind of build to be able to kind of handle all these things. And that's where I kind of look at Spiller as he has the physical look to him. It's kind of like the quarterbacks that are 6'4", 230, have the arm, but is it really translates to the field? And I have not seen the production to kind of match with the physicality and the athlete you're supposed to get there. And I think that the 40 that he ran as a pro day kind of shows you that he's not as explosive as people kind of think he is. And that he had a very poor kind of showing. Now I had different reasons possibly why his poor performance was at the combine. But I don't think he really did anything at his own pro day to kind of make up for that in any kind of capacity, making you think he's a top tier athlete. They got
he's not a value athlete, but he was still 25th playing in the SEC in 15-plus yard carries. Maybe he's not the home run threat, but he was consistently breaking off big chunks. 23rd in broken tackles. Again, good balance, good sturdy build. He was able to bust off a lot of different broken tackles and avoid tackles and things of that nature. Again, He's not the guy who's going to wow you. I'm not trying to make that argument, but he is a starter. He is a starter. I comped him to James Conner. I think he has a lot of similar skill sets to a James Conner. James Conner has now gotten 2 opportunities to be the main starter of a team. And you know what? If he does have that skill set, I think he's on that level of a skill set where if he finds himself in the right situation, like Conner did at the right time, he's good enough where the team may not press to bring in somebody else because he can play all 3 downs. I disagree with you on the pass blocking. I've seen enough tape of him on pass block. I think he's one of the better pass blockers on this draft class coming in. And you have a season like a Conner did where it's a fluky season, but he grinds out 16 touchdowns. He gets a 3-year contract, expected to be the starter. That's something in Isaiah Spiller's wheelhouse that I do think is on the table for him, depending upon where he goes. His draft value somewhere in that 3rd, 4th round. I think there's a good chance we're going to be talking about him getting selected during our day 2 draft.
Well, I'll go with if he does get drafted in the 3rd or 4th round, I absolutely would add him to my dynasty and probably my redraft.
Very good point.
Because I think that's going to guarantee he's going to get playing time.
Very good point. Yes, the draft capital, especially the running backs, right? What did we just talk about at the top of the show? The NFL has developed into this league where the running backs aren't as valued. So when you do spend a decent draft pick on a player, with the exception of Trey Sermon of the 49ers, when you do spend a decent amount of draft capital on a running back, chances are they're at least going to get the opportunity to play and to in a significant way. And Isaiah Spiller, right now, the consensus on him is that 3rd running back taken off the board, likely in those first 3 rounds. That will give him some sort of playing time at some point. How early it is will depend upon what team that winds up being. But that is the kind of draft capital we're looking for. Like the rest of these guys here, they're going to have to get in the training camp. They're going to have to prove it. Because when we start talking about the 5th round and on, it gets a little iffy at that point. But if it's definitely the top 3 rounds, and I would say that 4th round more times than not, that running back's going to get that chance. Chris, is there anybody we didn't talk about real quick that you want to mention?
Yeah, I think one of the guys that's going to probably go higher than some of the guys we talked about is Brian Robinson. I'm not a huge Brian Robinson fan now from Alabama, but there seems to be a lot of fans of NFL scouts. Talk about a guy who doesn't do anything special, but does a little bit of everything. Is going to be a guy who does the coach's dream, so to speak. He's going to get what's blocked. He's going to do his assignment. Going to be able to pass protect. One of the best pass protectors probably in this class. So you put all those things together, ran a 4.5. And at the combine, I think this guy's going to be probably the 3rd or 4th back off the backfield because there's a lot of talk about him being a guy that people really like. Not necessarily somebody that people think is a game changer, nor do I, but is a person that you're going to kind of keep on your radar because the draft capital is if somebody's drafting him there, then that means they probably plan on using him. The other guy was Tyler Beatty from Missouri. Talk about a guy for especially PPR purposes, has a lot of Naheem Hines skill set. A guy's definitely going to be a 3rd down scat back, isn't going to be utilized in early down probably at all, but is very effective out of the backfield. It's definitely a mismatch, and depending on where he gets kind of drafted, if you go see him go like 4th, 5th round, he's probably going to be utilized as a guy out of the backfield, kind of that that satellite role.
Yeah, I'll talk to your Brian Robinson point. I comped him to Jordan Howard. I think that's the type of guy he is. I think in the next level, 1st, 2nd down guy, I think he could fit that goal line role. I think he could find himself in a platoon situation as the early down back where he'll be expected to go 3-4 yards, a Mark Ingram type, a Jordan Howard type. I think he could be something of that guy, but I think he's even less of an explosive athlete. Like that 4.53 he ran, I was shocked because I don't see that on tape.
I don't either, and I think this is all about him going to Alabama from what I'm understanding is because he's able to do all the things he's supposed to do, coming from the pedigree. There are there's a lot of scouts out there that are kind of big on him as a result.
No, you're totally right. You're totally right. I do think he's a guy who might come in that 4th, 5th round. Another guy right now is being talked about in that same 4th, 5th round, but I'm not as keen on is Dameon Pierce. He's the type of guy as well that I don't know. He might go in that 4th, 5th round. I don't know exactly what he brings to the table. He's kind of same vein as a Brian Robinson. I think he is more of a 1st, 2nd down type of guy. And even in Florida, he was never really able to take over the role as the main guy they went to. He was always in a split time because he wasn't that special.
Well, this is the guy that I think you're going to hear the most overhype of There's people who have him as a top running back on their boards. That there's such a very strong opinion about this Pierce kid. I'm with you. I think he's a good athlete. I think he could be a contributor, but I don't see any more than a guy who's probably going to just hope for an opportunity. If somebody gets hurt or the first two guys get hurt, I don't think he's a good pass catcher at the backfield. I don't think he has a clear role. He's not necessarily the grinder that you're going to use for short yard situations. But I see a guy who has a good skill set that if maybe he got a chance to kind of shine, he could. But people seem to love this guy, and they're kind of projecting on him because of all the big plays he had in Florida. But I think it's kind of hard to go off of that. We've seen a lot of players get projected, like I talked about Kenny Balaj before earlier, off of limited usage and then think, well, what they're going to do if they get more carries. There's a reason sometimes they don't get more carries, and there's a reason a lot of guys start off great, and then as usage continues, they're not so explosive. This is one of those guys I would definitely say buyer beware.
Next week, we're going to be talking about the wide receivers. And unlike the running backs, we're kind of having mix and matching and figuring out what we're going to do. There's a lot of wide receivers to talk about. A lot of really good wide receivers. I've been reviewing the film on all these guys, and there's very few guys that I feel like are potholes when you talk about this wide receiver class from top to bottom. And it's just all going to be about, where did these guys wind up at, what teams, what schemes, what coaches, and all that jazz. And it's going to be a jam-packed one. It's the wide receivers and both offensive and defensive linemen when it comes to this draft class are so deep. There's going to be a lot of value in these guys from the top to the bottom of the draft. Maybe not in too many other positions outside of that. But, yeah, when we talk about wide receivers next week, oh, man, things in fantasy football are going to get very, very interesting when these guys are coming off the board as far as what target shares are going to be. Right, Chris?
Yeah, the receiver in position, especially with some of the opportunities that are out there, like a Green Bay, for example, just throw some teams out there. I think that when you look at this receiver class, I'm super excited. My biggest struggle for myself is who's the top running receiver I have on my board. But you talk about the kind of the depth. I think there's a lot of depth in this class, but there's also a huge chasm. After you get past those top like 6 guys, it's like a bunch of good guys, but they're not till 4th, 5th round, 6th round. A lot of guys that you can probably have your team. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of find those guys. And I think it's great to watch our show to kind of help you navigate those guys. We kind of helped you navigate last year through Terrace Marshall. We talked about, people getting hype and kind of what to look through. We warned you Terrace Marshall get a lot of hype. Don't necessarily buy it. And, a year later, we weren't necessarily wrong. So hopefully next week we can kind of help you again.
We'll keep that going. I'm very excited to talk about that one. Guys, make sure you check us out on Belly Up TV and on the Roku Belly Up Sports channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube and check out our podcast. But also, Belly Up has become the home of the NLFA. We're premiering their games on Monday nights on double headers. Monday Night Mayhem. The guys have been doing a great job with that. I want to give them a shout out. We'll have another double header again next Monday night. Some spring football action for you guys to enjoy while we wait for the real thing to come in the NFL and the NFL draft coming up. So make sure you tune it in. The broadcast from Belly Up is the best part about it, I'll say, because the football guys are great. It's always fun to watch football, but this crew, it was really entertaining to watch. So I implore everybody, turn on bellyup.tv, turn on your Roku channels to Belly Up Sports, and you're going to get a nice good time on a Monday night. Who could ask for anything more than that? I'm your host, Dan, and I'm joined here, Chris Dahauer. We'll see you guys again next week on the MD's Fantasy Football Show.